Thank you for tuning in to TalkWad.com, the world's fastest growing internet radio network. Please check out all the other great shows on www.talkwad.com. Welcome to Think Up, Unlimited Possibilities. This show is designed to uplift you as well as explore the cohesive nature of the universe in order to discover these limited possibilities available through converging and expanding consciousness. And here's your host, Patricia B. Scott.
Hello. Thank you for joining us once again. This is Think Up, and UP, of course, stands for Unlimited Possibilities. I hope that some of you that have been checking in on us from time to time, and I hope there's a few of you now that are starting to maybe follow the show, every Thursday evening at 7:30 to 8:30 here at the Talkwad Studios. And I am Patricia V. Scott, and this show is all about learning new strategies for life. I was thinking of it earlier today. Strategies, that's what life's all about. There's a group out there that kind of was an offshoot a couple decades ago from the EST training, if any of you are old enough to remember Werner Erhard and the EST training. And for those of you who have been listening, you know that in my previous life, my 20-year career in show business, I was reading all of these interesting books, and my instincts were drawing me into this field slowly through the years, using a lot of techniques that are now related to what I do for the last 21 years as a profession, which is primarily hypnosis and NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of other peripheral modalities that kind of are similar techniques, and there's a lot of other words for those things as well out there that people keep repackaging the same ideas and updating them or whatever, and NLP was a packaging of some techniques and ideas that were based in hypnosis and family therapy and some other things. So there's really nothing new. We talk about that a lot on this show. There's really nothing new, and what this show is about is the way we function, the way we are designed, the mind, that unlimited mind, I like to call it, that basically runs the show from behind the scenes 24 hours a day. And that unconscious, some people call it subconscious, that unconscious part of us, the part of us that is outside of our conscious awareness, in other words, that encapsulates to a larger extent who and what we are, than our conscious awareness of who and what we are. If you think about the unconscious and how it runs every cell in the body and how it so magnificently causes everything to work in harmony, or at least is designed to work in harmony and all of that, then it's really a part of us that is outside of any of our conscious ability to even comprehend the complexities of what it takes to function, even just one single cell and the way it functions. And yet if you come down to the cellular level and if you do studies on how the cells function, the process, the way that it has the different aspects or components and principles that apply to everything else in life. So that relativity thing again that good old Einstein talked about, if you look at the cell and how it functions and the processes, it's the same pretty much as on a larger scale the entire body, and then on an even larger scale perhaps a family, and then you can carry those same exact principles further and apply it to an entire community or a city or a state or a country or an entire planet, and you can even go beyond that into the entire universe. And the same basic principles always hold true. So the universe and our design didn't really need all of these words and techniques and modalities, and yet we, as amazing, curious human beings who want to figure things out and understand things, and we have something inside of a lot, if not most of us, at least the people that I travel with, that I interact with, that have an insatiable desire to understand, to explore that amazing realm that I call the unconscious mind or the unlimited mind. And I think that will go on from now on. Whatever changes happen, and that thing about energy doesn't really go anywhere, it just changes form. So who knows what form we will all be conscious, in what conscious state we will be 100 or 1,000 or 1,000,000 years from now. This is where my brain goes sometimes, and my mind, I should say, that uses my brain. So I find all of this very fascinating. Now tonight, again, this show is Think Up. If you're listening live on Thursday, the 21st of March, 2013, you can call in live anytime during the show. I welcome you to call in and add to or either contribute something relevant to what we're talking about or to ask questions and allow me to go off maybe in a little different direction on the same theme. And if you want to call in live, the number is 727-493-2055. That's 727-493-2055. And tonight this is show number 2 in a series. I'm still not sure how many different shows it's going to take to get through the research and the studies that I'm covering are all based on mind-body therapy, methods of idiodynamic healing in hypnosis, and there's a lot of material here, and I add things as they're relevant or as things come to me during the show. So I don't mind interruptions, even doing hypnosis or any kind of process, because, life is about unexpected interruptions, isn't it? Everything's going along nice and smoothly, a nice flow is going, and all of a sudden something shows up you hadn't anticipated. So to me, one of the wonderful things that this work teaches and offers to someone who goes down this road of studying these things is flexibility. What a wonderful thing to be as a human being, flexible. Because you know what? Things aren't always going to cooperate. Things are not going to go as you expect them to. Most of the time, probably. We can plan and plan and plan, and then that unexpected thing shows up. We better be ready for it, otherwise, if it messes up our plan, if we don't have a plan B, or even something that we can create out of our creative, unlimited mind, that unconscious also is our creative mind, we better have a channel open and be self-aware enough and aware of what our surroundings, our environment are offering in that moment, and be centered enough to be able to open up to whatever possibilities our creative mind can come up with to deal with those unexpected interruptions, segues, whatever you want to call them. When I'm working with clients and teaching hypnosis, where this weekend I'm excited because starting on Saturday and Sunday this weekend, day after tomorrow, we're going to be into our second weekend of the hypnosis certification training that we offer at the Up Hypnosis Institute, which I'm the president of here in Palm Harbor, Florida. And the second weekend is coming up. We have an additional, a total of 6 weekends. So this is their second weekend. And it's so exciting to me to watch people discovering some of these things in new ways. Again, in this, we get a lot of medical people in the classes. I get people who are studying hypnosis just to learn it for themselves, which is how I started out, not knowing it would be a career. And also some people that just want to help themselves and friends, just be a better caregiver perhaps, or caretaker. And others who do want to possibly add it to their current career or their current profession. I have a psychologist, a doctor, a neurologist. I've got a nutritionist in the class. I've got a pharmacist and another lady that's trained in hypnosis elsewhere and trained in Reiki and some other things, as I am as well. So they come from a lot of different directions to come to this work because it is about how we all function. And if everyone was functioning efficiently, effectively, and able to deal with deal with life's challenges and things that show up in effective ways and efficient ways without falling apart or without getting off balance in some way, sometimes very extreme in culture that people get very off balance. And if that didn't happen, just think of what a wonderful experience and what wonderful discoveries and inventions and creative ideas people would be able to come up with because they would be in a resourceful state all the time. So that's what this work is about. That's what I see this work as, a way to stay resourceful, regardless of what's happening all around you, that you can be in your most resourceful state to deal with it, to get something from it, to learn from it, to get stronger from it, to be more productive, to get some new creative ideas, maybe based on that distraction or that little sidetrack that you took based on something unexpected happening in your life. I apologize, a little bit nasal here tonight. I had a little sneezing going on earlier. Everything is fine though, and other than my voice sounds a little nasal to me in my earphones, so I apologize for that. So we're going to continue with this. Again, I gave the phone number 727-493-2055. And we are here every Thursday live, and you can go to the archives, or now you can find us on YouTube as well. But at talkwad.com, you can watch any archive shows. And every show I give something away. Tonight I brought something. I have given this away before, but I will do it again. And I have some other things on some of the other shows, so I want to encourage you to watch all of the shows. And this is a little booklet I give out in a class that I give now and then called Forming the Happiness Habit. Because after all, this show is about staying up, staying empowered, staying in control, and getting the most out of, again, any given moment in life. So this is a little booklet, and I will send that to you in a PDF. It's called Forming the Happiness Habit, and that's a nice little giveaway for tonight. So tonight we're continuing again on the mind-body therapy concept. This is based on the book, again, Mind-Body Therapy, Methods of Ideodynamic Healing and Hypnosis, and it is by Ernest L. Rossi and David B. Cheek, C-H-E-E-K. And you see them quoted quite often in their research is quite well known in the medical communities, medical literature, in different research and things that you might, if you're doing research on hypnosis, you will run across their names quite often and their studies being quoted. So it is very reputable, very detailed research on the effects of hypnosis. And in this case, based on the healing aspects of the hypnotherapeutic processes. And I'm just going to review a little bit here of what we did in the last show. And basically, we talked about Gerald Edelman had said it's not the contents of experience that are encoded in memory, but rather neural organizations that can process experience in certain ways. When a person has an especially emotional or a traumatic experience in their life, the brain does not necessarily remember the specific contents of the experience. Rather, there's a sensory or a perceptual selection process of categorization in the memory, or of the memory rather, that is then mapped in patterns in neural groups in the brain. So that's a little bit clinical, but that is what it's basically saying. We talked about it last time. Is when more than one person is in the middle of something that's happening that's a very traumatic or emotional experience, each person is encoding it differently. And we talked about getting together with family and having people remember different special moments or exceptional moments in your history, and everybody in the family remembers something a little bit differently, and you sometimes can get in heated discussions about, well, that's not how that happened. I remember very, very specifically how that happened. And of course the person is encoding it based on their emotions and their history and their filters, as we call them, that are going on, that are taking in that information differently than the rest of the people are. So, and I think that's a good thing. We all have our own unique reality, because reality is not out there. Reality is inside of our imagination. That's what this really means, if you want to break it down to simplistic terms, which I like to do. So, but again, this is going to be a little bit more of a clinically based show again today, part 2 of this, and taking off on this idea where we're talking about ideomotor signaling, which is, we talked about the pendulum, people that use a pendulum in order to access the unconscious, that you can get answers, yes and no answers and different things from the unconscious mind that possibly the conscious mind may be blocking in some way. And I won't go back over that, but you can listen to the previous show that was on the 14th of March and go back and review some of that if you'd like to. And ideomotor signaling in hypnosis sometimes means a head nod or an unconscious twitch of a finger. They're called finger signaling. And it's that kind of thing, but it is done outside of conscious awareness. That doesn't mean that sometimes the person's eyes are open and they'll see it happen. But it's not an intentional doing it consciously. It's something that is coming from that other than conscious part of the person. So these are just ways, again, to bypass what we call that critical faculty, that conscious analytical part of the mind that, again, if that's the part that could get the solution to the challenge that the person has, it would have already done it by the time they come to someone for these kinds of techniques. And this is where you get past whatever that resistance is at the unconscious level. It has the answers, and from a safe place only will it offer those things. Okay, so we talked about the idiodynamic finger signaling last time, how it offers someone the ability to access the emotional experience they had, and then convert the memories into verbal communication, and that's when it can be helpful for therapy. This form of therapy was proving to be a more permissive, the idiodynamic, more permissive style, more in the we talked about in the style of Milton Erickson, and of course his style of therapy was termed sometimes the utilization approach, or using every little signal. And in our classes that we teach hypnosis, it's a lot of working with someone, and this is about communication. So even if you're not wanting to be a hypnotist or something, everyone communicates. You can't not communicate. Even without words, if you're in a room with someone and no one's saying anything, there is communication happening all the time. So this is about learning to make it more efficient, learning to on purpose, make it something useful, and especially in the therapeutic process. So the utilization approach teaches us to start really fine-tuning our sensory acuity, meaning all of the senses are really in tune and acutely in tune to the minute, tiny little changes and movements in the person that we're wanting to help, because every little change has some representation at the unconscious level. And when you can get signaling happening, it's a great way to, again, bypass that critical faculty and get to where the answers to the questions are at the unconscious level that they may not have any idea of consciously. So that's basically what that is. So, and again, that was always shifting away from what we talked about, the earlier direct authoritarian style of therapy, which sometimes went on for for years and years. And I recently spoke with someone who's been working with someone for years, and it's like, yeah, and after all these years, we're realizing there hasn't been much improvement. And I hate to laugh, but I'm sorry, but if I'm doing something and paying someone for 2 or 3 or 4 years or 10 years or whatever it is, and I'm not getting any results, I think at some point before those many years are over, I would start to say, maybe this isn't exactly the method that's going to get the job done here. Because in hypnosis and NLP, it's very rapid. Results come very rapidly. Because again, you're creating the atmosphere for the person to resolve their own conflicts without that force, without that judgment, without that, all of those things. So it's more about the principles and the attitude of this work. And again, the expectation, we're going to be talking about that in this portion of it a little bit more. So that's all I'm going to do as a prep for what we covered in the last one. And again, if you want to cover some more, you can. About finger signaling, we talked a little bit more about how to do that and how to verify that it's valid. There's a verification process that Rossi and Cheek talk about in this book, and I probably added some of my own opinions about that. So we're just going to take off right where I left off last time now, and this is again about idiodynamic accessing of therapeutic states and the resolution of mind-body problems. Now, when I say mind-body, like on the sign above me, this sign I take when I do trade shows and when I do events and things like that and go speak in places where I have a table. And I had a gentleman of the cloth come up to me at one point at a trade show I was at, a religious man, and he walked up and he was looking at my sign and he says, you know, there's something missing there. Now, I knew exactly where he was going with this, and I just waited. I waited. You know, sometimes not saying something is very powerful, and it's a good place to be. Plus, I didn't want to assume what he was going to say, but I was pretty sure where he was going. He says, you know, you're missing something there. It says mind-body. I don't see the spirit there. And so it offered the opportunity for me to have a wonderful discussion with this fine gentleman about my ideas about the mind-body. And I'm going to offer this here because some of my mentors were religious people in this field. One of the fine people that just passed away within the last year that I dearly loved was the chaplain Paul Durbin. Now, if you go on the internet and look for Paul Durbin, and maybe together with the word hypnosis or something like that, or spirituality, or just put chaplain Paul Durbin, As I said, he just passed away. He had 3 books that he had written on hypnotherapy from a spiritual standpoint. And I had the wonderful privilege and honor of meeting and getting to know him in Arizona during the beginning years of my hypnosis career, which was, again, I started 21 years ago. So those first about 6, 7, 8 years, I was seeing him quite often in Arizona at a place called the National Board for Hypnotherapy and Hypnotic Anesthesiology. And it is no longer around because that gentleman died a few years ago. But Durbin, Paul Durbin, he was a brigadier general in the Army, and I always thought of him as a big teddy bear of just a loving, kindest man I think I've ever met. Kind of interesting to think of him as a brigadier general, just never thought of him as that. So again, our perceptions are very rarely reality, especially if we have very little information about someone. And a very special man, and the books he's written, I think one was called Holy Trinity Hypnosis. If you look on the internet, he has a wealth of articles, he has a wealth of scripts, he has a wealth of information that he has to offer people who may have the misconception that these techniques aren't in line with their religion or with their beliefs of any kind. And Dr. Durbin was just an amazing man at being able to put it all in a fine perspective for people. So what I said to this gentleman about the spirit being missing, I said the way I think of the mind-body as a human being, when I say there's a process, the field of study that I kind of encapsulated in a term, because we like to put our own label on things. My own term that I came up with many years ago, a long time ago, was mind-body cohesion. And if you look up the word cohesion, it is the instrument, it is the cohesive nature of the cells in the mind-body that opens up to that abstract realm that some might call spirituality, some might call universal consciousness, and I'm sure there are any number of other ones that I won't take time to attempt to recall, the ones even that I know. And it's really irrelevant what you call that realm. There is a realm beyond the mind, the brain and the body. But the mind is part of that. That unlimited mind goes beyond our physical self. And that is where all of these other phenomena that, if you study things like psychic phenomena and things like that, that is where all of these things live, out there in that realm. Pretty much what I think of the realm of dreams when you're sleeping at night. If you're the kind of person, if you've ever had a dream where you didn't just dream about being somewhere, but you were somewhere, and if you have done it, you know what I'm talking about. Some people call it lucid dreaming. And there's even different interpretations and definitions of what that means. But in the way that I'm talking about it, it's that thing where you feel you are there. You are there. It's not that I'm remembering or thinking about being there. It is I am there viscerally on every fiber of my being. I am there. And those are the times when I feel like we're tapping into that realm in some special way. So anyway, so that's what that's about. So mind-body problems incorporates just what that little segue meant, so that you know what I'm saying. Mind-body challenges is a better word that I like to use. Although in books, of course, we'll use the language of the medical and the scientific community. Problem, we have a problem, and yet it's a challenge. If you think of it as a challenge, it's less problematic for people, interestingly. And it's just a shift in, again, and I can't help myself. So there I go again, at reframing even, the way these wonderful, intelligent men framed that, because why would I not want to? And again, it's I'm here to offer to you my best thoughts and ideas on these things. And even though we know what we're talking about when I quote someone else using that phrase, I want to offer to you that if you're framing your own life situations as problems, that if you just start calling them challenges, it has a different effect on your systems, on your central nervous system. Because at the unconscious level, the representation of a challenge is something you would come up to. And I like that word up. Yes, I do. Because in every context I've ever thought of it or used it, it seems like it does uplift you. It empowers you. And anything that's going to empower you is what I want to be talking about in this show. That's what this show's about. And I think that's what life's about, by the way. So if you say it's a problem, oh my gosh, here's a problem. This is going to be so hard. I hear people say this all the time, and I hear people setting themselves up and programming, hypnotizing themselves with their verbal communication out of their mouth. If it's coming out of their mouth, you can bet it's playing in their head a lot as well, especially if they say it a lot. People have mantras. If you're around people and you hear kind of their mantras, and again, forgive me, but I do use my sister, but she has a mantra of "I can't afford it," and she's had that mantra for many years. So it's a reinforcing, hypnotic suggestion to her own unconscious mind that is going to make sure she will never be able to afford things, because that is the direction she's giving her mind. We move in the direction of dominant thought. You've heard me say that before, probably, if you've listened to the show. And that dominant thought, if it's always money problems, money problems, money problems, money problems, that is like a cue for the unconscious to move in that direction. So it keeps wanting to replicate what you're focused on. So what you want to do is focus on abundance. Celebrate people who have a lot. If you look at someone who has something you don't have, I talked about this in the frame of people who want to lose weight, people who want to be financially successful. If you look at rich people, say they're greedy, guess what? Your unconscious is going to fight you every step of the way. So you want to reframe those
things. So if you reframe a problem into a challenge, immediately you become stronger to come up to that challenge. And just try it on something. Well, actually, don't try it. In the words of Yoda, who I still haven't invited back yet. Maybe I'll bring him next time. Yoda says there is no try. There's only do or do not. And at the unconscious level, that is so right on. The unconscious is waiting for you to give it something to act on. That's its job. It acts out on what you offer it in consciousness. What you entertain in thought, your unconscious is working to act on. If it's possible, it will create it. And a lot more is possible. Like I said, unlimited possibilities. A lot more is possible than trust me, at the physical level than you can ever imagine. So now we're going to start with the next section of this, and we're going to talk about, let's see here, utilizing a variety of ingenious head, hand, and arm signaling. So there's arm signaling, too. You can have arm movements based on some of these techniques. You can monitor position for measuring and modulating intensity of the experience. So again, this comes down to, in the words of someone said, don't try this at home unless you have training. But for those of you who have done some of this, you understand. And just if you're just listening for information purposes, I do want to make it relevant for everyone listening, because it is. It really is. And if you start to get really good at watching little tiny movements and representations of people, changes in people's experience or their posture or their complexion or whatever it is, or their voice, also verbal and nonverbal communication can be a wonderful opportunity to improve the communication that you're wanting to have with someone on any level, whether it's a business experience or an interaction at a networking event or anything. It doesn't matter. In a family, wanting to communicate better. So the monitoring position that is recommended by Rossi and Cheek in this book for measuring the depth of trance is to have the person hold one arm in a neutral position at a comfortable level and have them experiment with raising and lowering the arm as a measure of their inner experience. And in this way, the patient can monitor patient, because they're doctors, they're talking in that, they're talking from a medical standpoint. The patient can monitor their own unconscious processes while modulating the degree to which they express their inner experience or their fearful emotion, perhaps. The process of whatever's happening, their negative emotions, psychosomatic symptoms that can then be transformed and resolved through insight gained by them using this self-guided ideomotor gauging approach. Again, this is about teaching someone else to do it that you're wanting to help. If you're a therapist or if you're someone doing these techniques with someone, as a hypnotist, we call them clients in Florida because I am not a doctor, although I have a doctorate, but I'm not a medical doctor, so I don't call myself doctor. But so that's what that is basically meaning there. Now, traditional hypnotic theory used an authoritarian approach. We talked about that before. It assumed that healing would occur only by forcing the person to reaccess a past trauma. Now, this is the way they used to do it. Go into the trauma again and again and again. And my thought is, wasn't it bad enough the first time? Why do I have to keep reliving this thing? That's what people do anyway. And it just never made sense to me. even before I started studying these things. It was like, why would you want to keep reliving something over and over? It just keeps re-imprinting over and over and over. And I know what the intention is, but it wasn't a very efficient way of doing it. Anyway, they would do that, reaccess the past trauma, bring it into normal consciousness through speech. And this was often done by leading the person with direct suggestions. Again, this is the older style of hypnosis, that authoritarian approach, direct suggestions, telling the person what to do. And it gave all the power to the therapist, basically. And we've talked about Freud a little bit and about the Svengali effect, Mesmer, and some of the people who really did think they were the one who had the power. And that just is so not the way it is. Although they do have the power for their own experience, but that's where it ends, basically. So it was leading the person, direct suggestions, all the powers with the therapist. And the therapist, as a byproduct of that, would start believing that they were affecting the therapeutic changes in their patients. So they thought they were the one making it happen. The psychobiological approach, on the other hand, puts the healing power squarely on the patient, on the person, on the client. The non-threatening, the permissive attitude of the therapist. It allows the person to break through the limitations of their conscious attitudes and solve the problems in their own unique way, because everybody is unique and different. We function, the design is pretty much all the same. The principles are still the same, but each person has their own strategies, their own way of doing it. And so through their they can break through their limitations, um, any conscious attitudes, and they can solve the problems in their own unique way using their own vocabulary, their own experiences, and their unconscious potential. The major difference, of course, between these two approaches is the direction from which the healing is believed to have come. True sustained healing must always come from within the patient's own experience. And that's where I was talking with someone, I think it was earlier today, might have been yesterday, about, if someone had a cancer on their skin and they stuck a Band-Aid on it and just ignored it. That that's symbolic cancer or whatever it is, that the expression from the body is a signal. Signals are good. And what we've done in the last few decades, at least in Western medicine, is we've gotten away from paying attention to the signal and figuring out, getting to the root or the root cause of the signal, and figuring out how do we adjust things to correct that, or to make it back in balance, or whatever it is. When it's a physical thing, of course, it's about getting back to the natural order, to balance. And instead, they started covering up symptoms. It's about symptom removal. And thus, the expression that's coming from inside of that wonderful intelligence of the person has to keep finding either more powerful ways to express in the same direction, or different ways to express that need. It's an expression. It's a signal that something needs attention. And if you don't give attention to the actual source of what is needing the attention, and you keep dealing with just the symptoms, the signal, in other words, and that's having to do with physical or emotional, same thing, and that's what this is about. Not covering up the symptom or trying to eliminate a symptom, but getting the correction done at a deeper level or at a higher level of mind. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the value of motivation. Now, this is something, when I give interviews, when I do my interviews with potential clients, I always, at least the last few years, I pretty much tell them there are two things, in my opinion, at this point, at least in my learning of all of these things, that I find to be absolutely essential and necessary for someone to achieve really good success with hypnosis. And those two things are motivation, which we're going to talk about now. Motivation. The higher the motivation, the greater the motivation. The faster and the more efficiently the mind starts resolving challenges, doing things that are in line with what the outcome or the goal is. The faster it will achieve those results. And the second thing is that someone trust and respect and feel comfortable with the person that they're working with, the hypnotherapist or the doctor or whoever it is. So there has to be that trust factor, because there has to be, if that isn't there, that now you've got some stress and you've got some unconscious stress too, and that's going to not facilitate the opening of that channel that I talk about that gets to the unconscious. You got to be comfortable enough to allow that mind to open up and to be in that vulnerable position of free access to the unconscious. Now, I don't think of it as vulnerable from my frame point. Some people do from where they're sitting, of course, but it feels vulnerable from their standpoint sometimes. But once they realize that their mind is always the part of them that's working to protect them, and even if a therapist is wanting to dig for some trauma in someone's life, if holding on to that trauma is serving them as protection in some way, all the digging in the world isn't going to make that person's unconscious let go of that or let it out or express it. Until and only when it's safe will that person's unconscious allow those things to be tapped into and resolved. Only when it's safe. Although some harm can be done by an inexperienced or I don't know, inexperienced, I guess, therapist. Anyway, so according to Rossi and Cheek, they say that one in 5 people, about 1 in 5 can experience deep hypnosis in the first session. That's their, of course, through their research and what they had discovered. I don't know if that's accurate. I think people, if they really are wanting to, they can do it in the just about anybody can in the first session. Although sometimes it does take a little while to get past those little bit of doubts or fears or whatever. And but they found that 1 in 5 can experience deep hypnosis in the first session, so that's nice to know. And the percentage approaches 100, by the way, when there's a strong motivation. So just as I was just talking about. And also, by the way, when there's a clear understanding of the value of hypnosis. So again, that expectation plus the motivation and then the letting go and allowing it to happen is what will facilitate having a very deep experience. And that's even that description even has many different ways you could offer to explain what that means, because it's different for everyone as well. But we're talking more about brainwave levels, I believe. So we're talking about getting into alpha and actually being able possibly to get to the theta brainwave state within one hypnotic process. And I think that's very achievable for everyone if they're highly motivated and if they really want it, if it's important to them and they cooperate. That's basically all it takes. So the understanding of the value of hypnosis. It's most dramatically evidenced by the ease with which critically ill patients are able to respond to hypnotic suggestion. They're already in an altered state. They're already in trance. They're already there. Regardless of the expertise of the hypnotherapist, by the way, the level of motivation of the patient can make all the difference in the world between success and failure. So that's why I tell my newer students, if they're, before they've developed a lot of confidence in their skill as a hypnotist or a hypnotherapist, that as they are offering something and stay in the right mindset of really wanting to help the person and keeping themselves in that intentional caring type mode of energy, if you will, that person feels that, they sense that. And even if you aren't maybe skilled with the language yet or your techniques, their motivation and trust in you and your caring about them and wanting to help them will by a long shot get past anything in your technique that is lacking. And I know that from when I first started. I had very little confidence in doing hypnosis with my very first client. And I think I mentioned I used to sit there in my office and look at the clock when people would book an appointment, because I didn't have a lot of them that first few months, And I would be so nervous that I would sit there and go, I'd look at the clock, it's 5 after, oh, maybe they won't come. It almost was like I was going to be relieved that I wouldn't have to, And yet once you, of course, start doing, and that's the way those kind of thoughts, happen. Once you start moving and doing something, that dissipates very, very quickly, and you become involved with wanting to help someone, and that overtakes any lack of confidence. So it really does work. So when I first am interviewing someone, I ask them on a scale of 1 to 100, how important is this to you? I need to know that they're highly motivated, and frankly, for my purposes, I want to get them to 100 before we even start the very first part of the hypnosis session, the official ritual of hypnosis. Although hypnosis starts from the first communication, of course. Like I said, it's about communication. But before we start the ritual of the hypnotic process or whatever other process we're doing, I want them to convince me that it's really important to them, and I want them to convince themselves because I know then they're going to cooperate. They're going to be fully involved with the process, and that's all I need from them. Then once it's important enough, then I know that they're going to achieve some results. And most of the time on the very first session, they have some pretty profound results, depending on what they're coming for. So let's see here. Regardless, we already talked about that. So the level of motivation can make the difference. Not only does the patient have to be motivated, it's of equal importance that the therapist be thoroughly convinced of the advantages of hypnosis. Now, that might sound kind of silly. I'm getting ready to do an interview actually pretty soon. I believe the topic we've pretty much zeroed in on is going to be about being a congruent hypnotist, walking the walk, talking the talk. Being someone who, if you're doing these kind of processes, you're also doing them for yourself. And if that person is sitting across from me, I believe that I have to be 100% convinced that they can succeed at what they're there for. If I don't have that level of motivation and belief inside of myself while I'm working with that person, I am not serving them well. And that's the way I teach this work. I'm going to refer them out if I get a sense during the interview that I can't help them or that I'm not going to be the best personality for them. I am more than willing to refer out. I refer out probably as often as I keep clients, as I take clients. And I take just a limited number of clients these days because I do so much training. I love training others. So I have some great people out there that I can refer people to. And that makes me look good as well. And it makes me very happy that they can succeed. And if someone succeeds, that is the ultimate result that I'm looking for. If it isn't me, I want them to succeed with someone else. And sometimes there's financial considerations why I send someone elsewhere, whatever. It's irrelevant to me because it's them doing it anyway. And again, if I know that they're motivated and they really want what they want, I'm going to send them to someone that I know is skilled to take that reality and allow them to make their own adjustments because that's what's ultimately happening anyway. So, again, the therapist must be convinced of the advantages of hypnosis that hypnosis can offer this person, and that way the person feels that from you. A physician who has confidence that hypnosis can be helpful can go a long way toward convincing their patients of its value because of the prestige position that doctor has. We call it prestige suggestions. I love getting referrals from doctors. Most of my private practice is on doctor referrals. And when a doctor tells someone to come to me, there's a lot that has already been established in their expectation of what I can do for them just by taking that suggestion from that what we call a prestige suggestion from their doctor who they trust, of course. And they're going to come to me with that already instilled. So that goes a long way too. That's why I love working with doctors' referrals. One of the reasons, and so that definitely helps, and it's especially valuable in a situation where you, as a hypnotherapist, are getting referrals from people in the medical profession. Like I just said, I found these to be the best subjects because their healthcare professional has shown confidence in my ability to help their patient, and that motivates them to participate fully in the process. People who are in extreme trauma or pain are already in a kind of trance state. I talked about that in the emergency room, someone that's been in an accident. It allows the hypnosis process to be very effective because the motivation to gain relief is very high. So if someone is in some trauma, whether it's pain or some other kind of thing, it is very easy to achieve that hypnotic involvement and to get them to find some relief with that. So that's a wonderful area where these things can help. Now, I'm going to offer you a true example of this kind of thing, of a trauma type experience where the person came to me, and I really did learn a lot. This was early in my career, but I learned a lot about the importance of motivation. shortly after opening my private practice in Southern California over 20 years ago. Like I said, I'm in my 21st year. And like most hypnotherapists, when they first begin to see clients, I lacked the confidence that quickly comes once you realize that you're actually able to help people. But in the beginning, you don't have that, of course. And I had pretty much decided that since I had never smoked cigarettes, well, I can't say I never did. I looked silly trying to do it for a very brief period when I was about 12 and thought I was going to die from that first puff, but I survived and eventually realized it looked silly when I was without inhaling, so I stopped. Thank goodness. But since I'd never smoked, when I first started this, I thought I would probably not be ideally suited to assist others in quitting smoking. Now that was a false belief that I had back then, or a expectation, but it was based in fear a little bit, because a lot of new hypnotists I find are afraid to work with smokers because there's no black and white. I mean, there's no gray area. It's black and it is black and white. You're either a smoker or you're not. Although I have on a little caveat there, I have helped people who just wanted to cut back. That's a whole different thing. But in general, people want to quit completely. It's they either are or they aren't. There's no in between. It's a very specific thing there's an evidence procedure there that is very blatant, and people are afraid of failing, so they say, oh, I won't work with smokers, and yet at the upcoming International Association of Counselors and Therapists and International Medical and Dental Hypnotherapy Association combined conference coming up in May, I'm going to be giving a talk called Smokers Are Easy. So probably should have said that at the end of this, but this is where I started. I decided I didn't want to work with smokers. I thought since I hadn't smoked that I wouldn't be the best person for them to work with. So I told myself that I would not be able to relate to their problem, and in spite of the extensive training that I had in this area. So how proficient can we be at rationalizing excuses for that which we fear, right? That's what I was doing, is rationalizing an excuse. One of my first clients cured me of this erroneous thinking and taught me a valuable lesson on the power of motivation. This gentleman was in his late 40s, and he had recently married a much younger woman whom he absolutely adored. He had been a heavy smoker for most of his life. However, now it was of the utmost importance that he quit. You see, his wife was pregnant with their first child. He was overjoyed, he was proud, and he was adamant that he didn't want this child to be exposed to his bad habit or to ever see him smoke a cigarette. During the initial interview, he expressed such determination and focus on this goal that I somehow knew he would be successful. I found myself motivated and confident because of his resolve. And he had worked with me with something, and he had faith in me. And he said, I know you're the one that can help me with this. And he stopped smoking after one session. Now, I basically told him, close your eyes. That was my induction. And then I picked up my script that I'd learned. I did the nice interview that I had been taught. And then I read the script. I tried very hard not to sound surprised when I spoke with him a couple of months later, and he told me he could hardly believe how easy it had been. Perhaps my technique was not polished at that time, but the outcome taught me to follow my instincts. That experience gave me an enormous amount of motivation and confidence, obviously. Afterward, I began getting referrals from former smoking clients, including him. He got me started pretty much in that direction. And they became the majority of my patients, or my clients, rather, and a good source of pride and fulfillment for me through the years. And I still work with smokers. I basically interview them and first and get them to be convinced they're going to quit before we even start the session. And that's kind of the secret that I'll be teaching people. Now, you know the secret. A little more to it than that, but that's basically it. So I realized that smokers made ideal hypnotic subjects, because by the time they come to a hypnotist, here's the good part. By the time they come to a hypnotist, they've already tried everything else, and they're extremely, motivated. Otherwise, they wouldn't be coming through my door. So if they're coming through a hypnotist's door and they've already tried, all the other things that are out there, which they usually have, and they've failed all those times, but they're still coming, looking for something, they're motivated. So that's a good sign, and you can use that. So, and it'd be interesting if they just came to us first. They'd save a lot of money and a lot of side effects from whatever else is out there these days. But basically, it makes them really ideal subjects. So I'm not going to get through much more of this. We're going to continue with this the next time again, because there's so much in this mind body therapy book. We could do several. I may interject some other shows in between, but I don't want to get off on a whole new part of this right now, because I'm running out of time. And I want to mention again my website. It's www.uphypnosis.com. Of course, UP stands for Unlimited Possibilities. And if you go to uphypnosis.com, and you can either email me through that website, or you can just email me at uphypnosis@yahoo.com is another way to get it to me. I will send you this free booklet. I love to give things away. Every time I do a show, whether you're watching on an archive or live, just send me an email, shoot me an email, and tell me you want the download of Forming the Happiness Habit. This is a little booklet. Sometimes I give some other ones away, so you might want to watch some of the other shows that are archived, and I would appreciate that. I'm planning to have some in-studio guests coming up in the next few weeks. I have some amazing people that I know and interact with. Some of them may be by phone, some may be by in the studio if they're in the local area. And yet I know people all over the world, basically, and definitely a lot of them in this country that I'm going to have as in studio guests, so that we can add to this conversation. Because it is about whether you're working with a physical, mental, or emotional issue, they are all intertwined. You cannot be unbalanced in one area and not have it be rippling out and affecting every other area. Now, the good side of that also is that once you start working with hypnosis on what is the presenting biggest thing, the biggest issue, whether it be physical, mental, or emotional in your determination of your conscious assessment, when you start working, and it is all self-hypnosis, so I'm also talking about you working on this with your own strategies, learning these things to do it, because it is all you doing it anyway. And I'm all for someone doing it for themselves, and I can just take all my time to write books and get out there and go on book tours, which would be a lot of fun for me, and speaking at conferences and seminars and things. So you learn it for yourself, and the motivation comes from you. The inner resources come from you. The techniques you can get from people like myself. And there's some other great people out there in the world that I'll be hopefully introducing you to some of my favorites. And you can learn these things. It takes practice like anything else. And it's about learning how to be resourceful. And when you start working with your biggest in your determination presenting issue, and again, whether it's mental, physical, or emotional, it's irrelevant, or if it's a life situation, then it also has that ripple effect. It also ripples out and starts to balance out and resolve other areas of conflict or things in your life, other challenges you have on every level of your being. So just know that once you start that, it's like dropping that pebble in the middle of the pond and the ripples start moving out in every direction. Once you start the process of self-discovery, of activating your inner resources, your unconscious mind will take that as an indication that you're giving it permission to assist you to be all that you can be. That's what this is about. To be the best you can be, to be the most successful financially, physically, mentally, on every part of your being. And it just keeps getting better and better. I'm going to be 61 in October. I'm sorry, 62. I forgot how old I was there for a second. And, it's just amazing to me. I have to, I keep adding years to my life, at least 189 I'm up to now, because there's so much more to discover and to enjoy and to experience in life. So remember, life is filled with unlimited possibilities. You just have to keep your eyes open, stay centered, take that deep breath I talk about now and then, get back into the moment and look around, open your senses up and experience what is there in this moment I can appreciate and enjoy and that can enhance my life. And that's your power center. So from there, you can accomplish anything. You can come up to all of the challenges and be stronger and better on the other side of them. So remember to think up. That's the name of this show, Think Up. Unlimited Possibilities. And I am Patricia V. Scott. Please join me again next Thursday, 7:30 to 8:30 Eastern Standard Time here at the wonderful Talkwad Studios. And I will look forward to seeing you again, and we will continue on mind-body therapy. Thanks a lot for joining me.